You look around one day and realize almost everyone around you is exhausted, yet somehow still financially fragile. People in their 20s expect struggle. People in their 30s still believe time will fix everything. But something strange happens around 40. The optimism starts disappearing. The excuses become quieter. And many people suddenly realize they spent 2 decades running without ever truly moving forward. Not because they were lazy, not because they were stupid, not because they never worked hard. Most of them worked almost every single day of their adult lives. And that is exactly what makes the realization so painful. Because effort was never the problem. The real problem was invisible. Small decisions, repeated emotional patterns, comfort disguised as survival, years of living on automatic pilot. Most people think financial collapse looks dramatic, but usually it looks ordinary. A normal apartment, a normal salary, normal routines, normal stress, and almost nothing saved after 20 years of working. Think about that. 2 decades of waking up early, answering messages, dealing with pressure, sacrificing energy, tolerating people you never even liked, and still feeling financially vulnerable. That does something to a person psychologically. Because eventually the mind starts asking dangerous questions. Where did all the years go? How am I still behind? Why does it feel like I've been surviving instead of building? And deep down, most people already know the answer. They just avoid looking directly at it. Because the truth is uncomfortable. The problem was never one catastrophic decision. It was thousands of unconscious ones, tiny leaks, tiny denials, tiny emotional escapes repeated for years. And then one day, 40 arrives, not as a number, but as a mirror. Stop. Read that again. 40 does not create the problem, it reveals it. Most people imagine financial failure as something obvious. They imagine reckless spending, massive debt, bad decisions. But that is rarely how it happens. The real danger is far more subtle. It hides inside routines that feel harmless. A reward after a stressful week. A purchase to feel better. An upgrade that feels deserved. Another month of postponing difficult conversations with yourself. Because deep down, many people do not use money to build security. They use money to regulate emotion. Stress, boredom, loneliness, frustration, exhaustion. Money becomes anesthesia. And the scary part is that society normalizes all of it. Everyone is tired. Everyone wants escape. Everyone keeps saying they deserve something. And maybe they do. But eventually the future sends the bill. A bill made of lost years, lost compounding, lost opportunities, lost emotional energy. Because time quietly punishes delay, especially financial delay. People underestimate how expensive emotional avoidance becomes over decades. One ignored habit becomes 10 years. One postponed decision becomes an entire financial identity. One moment of comfort repeated thousands of times becomes a life. And the strangest part, most people never consciously choose this path. It happens slowly, silently, automatically, like water filling a room, one drop at a time. That is why the realization hurts so much later. Because there was never one dramatic moment to blame, only years of invisible drift. And eventually people start doing something psychologically dangerous. They stop believing change is possible. Not publicly. Publicly they still smile. They still joke. They still say things will work out. But privately, something collapses. Hope becomes thinner. Energy becomes mechanical and survival becomes identity. There is a man named Daniel. Not rich, not poor, just normal. Which is exactly why his story matters. At 23, Daniel believed time was infinite. He worked hard, people liked him, he had dreams. And like most people, he assumed financial stability would eventually appear naturally if he kept working long enough. So he lived the way everyone around him lived: small financing plans, small monthly payments, small emotional purchases. Nothing extreme, nothing irresponsible enough to trigger alarm. And that is important, because destruction rarely announces itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers for 20 years. Daniel kept telling himself the same thing. I'll get serious later. Later when income increased. Later when stress decreased. Later when life felt more stable. But later has a strange way of never arriving. Because life does not calm down automatically. It becomes more complex, more expensive, more emotionally demanding. And one day, Daniel noticed something terrifying. He'd spent almost 15 years working, but had almost nothing that truly belonged to him. His salary entered his account every month and somehow disappeared every month. Not through luxury, through leakage, subscriptions, convenience, stress spending, impulse upgrades, financial numbness. Wait, because this is where the story becomes dangerous. Daniel was not financially ignorant. He already knew many of the right answers. Save more, spend less, invest earlier, avoid debt. Everyone knows these things. But knowledge was never his real problem. Emotion was. Because every time anxiety appeared, spending reduced discomfort temporarily. Every time exhaustion appeared, convenience became irresistible. Every time frustration appeared, consumption created relief. And slowly, without realizing it, Daniel trained himself to escape discomfort instead of confronting it. That pattern followed him for years. Not just financially, psychologically, emotionally, existentially. Because avoidance compounds too. And then something happened that changed the way Daniel saw his entire life. One night, he opened his banking app after paying bills. And for a few seconds, he just stared at the number left on the screen. Not angry, not shocked, just tired, deeply tired. And then he did something he had never done before. He scrolled back. Not 1 month, not 3 months, 6 entire months of transactions. And what he saw was not a budget problem. It was a portrait of his emotional life. Every Sunday night, anxiety purchases. Every stressful Wednesday, delivery apps. Every Friday after a hard week, something he didn't actually need. The pattern was not financial, it was emotional, with a price tag attached. And here is what I want you to ask yourself. If you opened your last 6 months of spending right now, what emotion would you find hiding behind the numbers? Suddenly, Daniel realized something terrifying. He was no longer building a future, he was maintaining a cycle that consumed his time, consumed his attention, consumed his emotional energy, and left almost nothing behind. That realization hit harder than debt ever could, because numbers are external, but wasted years feel personal. Most people are not afraid of working hard. They are afraid of discovering they worked hard in the wrong direction. That is a completely different kind of pain. That night, Daniel didn't make a budget. He did not delete apps. He didn't promise to change everything tomorrow. He just did one thing. He sat in the discomfort without buying anything to make it go away. And for the first time in 15 years, he was actually present with his own life. Most financial problems are not mathematical first. They are behavioral, emotional, psychological. People do not usually destroy their future in one dramatic decision. They slowly negotiate it away, one excuse at a time, one avoidance pattern at a time, one emotionally comforting lie at a time. And eventually, the future arrives asking questions the past can no longer answer. The terrifying part is not reaching 40 with nothing saved. The terrifying part is realizing how invisible the process was. Because most people never felt like they were destroying their future. They felt normal, busy, tired, distracted, emotionally overloaded. And that is exactly why the trap works. Modern life keeps people mentally exhausted enough to stop examining themselves deeply. So they continue repeating patterns unconsciously, year after year, decade after decade, until someday they wake up feeling financially old before feeling emotionally ready for it. Stop. Because this changes everything. The real danger was never lack of money. The real danger was unconscious repetition. The same emotional reactions, the same coping mechanisms, the same avoidance loops. Repeated so many times they started feeling like personality. That is why some people earn more and still stay trapped. Because external growth without internal awareness changes almost nothing. Money amplifies patterns. It does not automatically heal them. A person who uses spending to escape discomfort at 30 often does the same thing with a larger salary at 40. The numbers change. The mechanism stays the same. And maybe that is the hardest realization of all. Most people were never truly taught how to build internal stability. So they spend years trying to buy externally what they never learned to create internally. Peace, security, worth, relief, identity. But emotional holes are infinite consumers. And eventually, money disappears inside them. Maybe that is why so many people reach 40 feeling confused. Because externally, their life looked functional. They worked, paid bills, stayed responsible, kept moving. But internally, they were drifting the entire time. Drifting emotionally, drifting financially, drifting psychologically. And drift is dangerous because it feels passive. But passive decisions still create active consequences. Daniel learned this slowly. His bank account did not transform overnight. The first month he saved almost nothing. The second month a little more. But something else changed first. Before the money, before the numbers, he started noticing the impulse before acting on it. That single pause between feeling and spending became the most valuable thing he ever bought. Because it cost nothing, and it returned everything. Years later, those consequences start speaking loudly. Through anxiety, through regret, through panic about the future, through the terrifying realization that time moved faster than awareness. And maybe the scariest part is this. Many people still believe the solution is purely financial. More income, another opportunity, a better job. But if the internal patterns remain invisible, the cycle often survives every external improvement. Because the future is not destroyed in dramatic moments. It is quietly traded away in unconscious repetitions. And maybe that is the real reason this realization hurts so deeply. Not because people failed financially, but because they suddenly realized they were never fully conscious while building their own life. If this video made you uncomfortable, that discomfort may be more important than motivation, because awareness always feels heavier before it feels freeing. And maybe tonight, after the noise disappears, you will do what Daniel did. Not a plan, not a promise, just one pause. The next time you feel the urge to escape something through spending, wait 60 seconds and ask yourself one question. What am I actually trying to feel right now? That question will not fix your finances tonight. But repeated enough times, it rewrites the pattern of an entire decade. Invisible patterns, emotionally expensive patterns, patterns disguised as personality. And the question is no longer whether time is passing. It always was. The real question is this: how much of your life has already been decided by patterns you still refuse to see? Wait. If something in this video felt familiar, do not scroll away yet. Comment one word below. The emotion you spend the most money trying to escape, just one word, because the moment you can name it, it stops naming you.